the session, what we're going to take a look at today is essentially differentiated instruction in the season that we are in. How the heck do we customize the learning for our kiddos that need it in this season? And so, because I don't need to be the expert in everything, I have invited Lisa to really speak to some of this area and this work. And so in a moment, I'm actually going to pass things off to her. But the one thing I want to mention is that, again, the slides that you see on your screen, that bit.ly link will stay live. So we won't close access to the slides at any point. They will stay live, and so you can come back to them at any point. Okay? All right. You know me. I'm Nikki. I'm the coordinator of instructional and assistive technology. I've been doing these lunch and learns for a few weeks now, and apparently they've been helpful. And I've had to post them on YouTube, which was never a life dream for me. So, but I actually want to introduce Lisa, who is our inclusive learning teacher connected with our ILT team. And so, Lisa, why don't you give yourself just a, who are you? In a romper.
We weren't going to bring that up. I have a girlfriend who bought me a romper and was like, you can never wear this out of your house. And I'm like, ta-da! I get to wear it to work today because I'm in my house. I am Lisa. I know some of you, which is so nice. It's so good to see some of your faces. And I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for, this is my 15th year of teaching, and worked in capacities from early literacy, and phys ed was where I started, and then all the way through to 8th grade, knowledge and employability, and literally every grade in between. Doing literacy, numeracy, teacher, learning support lead, assistant principal type stuff, all over the place. My husband, so lovingly, we moved our family to Edmonton from Lethbridge, so I taught in Lethbridge for 13 years, and then we moved to St. Albert, and I am now teaching here, and it's exciting to be here and to be working with the inclusive learning team and meeting all of the wonderful Sturgeon teachers. So I am excited. I'm like, I feel like I want videos so I can see all your faces, not just your bit emojis. Like, who are all these people? It's been a very steep learning curve of learning all the new admins, all the new teachers, all the new teaching teams, educational assistants, the schools, how to even get to the schools, but it's been a joy this year.
Well, thank you. And she is a firecracker, and we'd love to have her. So just as we kind of roll along, I want to just clarify that in the session description, we were calling this a basic. It's a basic session, but I have changed my mind a little bit. Anytime we talk pedagogy, it is not basic. So we've upped the ante. It is an intermediate session. What we're going to do is we're just going to take a look at how do we meet the needs of all of our kiddos. Doesn't matter how unique they are, but how do we meet the needs of all of our kiddos, particularly in this season? And so we're going to start talking about UDL, so Universal Design for Learning. But the other thing I want to mention is that we have unique kiddos at every grade level and every content area, so this will apply to all. This is not unique to any age group, any school, any subject. It will apply to all. And with that, here's our plan. I'm gonna pass it over to Lisa right away, and she will start talking about UDL, what is Universal Design for Learning. We'll talk some strategies. What does this actually look like, and what does this actually mean? And then I will kind of run things home. I'll talk about some helpful techie things. And just some things to kind of consider as you are planning and executing the teaching and learning for your kiddos. So with that, I'm going to mute my microphone, and Lisa, you can take over.
Okay, well, this is exciting. It was so funny because I'm like, design learning, this has been around forever. And we have adapted it and learned and grown in different ways that we've done it. But basically, it's that concept of using the whole brain, of having engagement, so getting your why of what, why we're doing this, why is this important, going into that representation of having multiple means of understanding what they need to learn, and then the actual action and an expression, that frontal lobe part that's like the how am I going to show that I know this? How is this going to work? So it almost became like more of a thing, I think, in COVID, because we want to keep this into like, now we're in this digital environment. And so what does that even mean when you think of designing learning in a digital environment? Because in the classroom, we design learning all the time around what the physical space looks like, how we want to organize the lessons, where the kids are going to move to, and you have a real like in-depth understanding. You generally have a team of people. Well, now we're a teacher in front of a computer screen thinking of how are we going to engage our whole brain and bring in this designed learning. But the foundations are the same. You know your students deeply. You know how A, B, C can't read. How do I need to engage them? I know C, D, E don't have internet access. How are they going to be engaged? So it kind of brings in these complexities during COVID, but it's still that real design from the very beginning of how do I get their whole brain engaged even in a digital online environment. So if we go through, if Nikki just flips to the next slide, just each of these, that specifics of the why of learning, if we think this is the engagement part of the big idea, and right now that's hard to get through. I was thinking like, even with the little ones, like those big picture concepts of like, why would I be learning online? Why do I have to turn on my computer? Like, this seems very strange to me. Normally I like play with blocks and have like very hands-on type activities and environments. So this is that big idea concept can be something that during COVID emergency teaching is something that's more difficult to kind of get through. So I just was like, when I was brainstorming this, I was like, no, it's just taking it back to those really, really foundational things. Why do we read? We read to learn. We all need to read to learn. That's why we read. That's why anyone learns letters, sounds, eventually reading into all the genres. We're reading to learn. Well, what do we need to learn about right now? Well, there's lots of real life examples that we could take in that why, that it would engage that idea of why are we even bothering to do this? Of, well, we still need to learn, and actually we need to learn more, because right now in the world there's lots of information out there that's going to seem really unpredictable, a little bit scary. We're going to have to weed through fake news. That's like a big deal right now. I laughed so hard when I saw the meme where it was like, environment scientists now or epidemiologies our sincere apologies, the environment scientists. And I'm like, yeah, we need to learn to read so that we understand what this means. So anyways, that's part of then, when I think of engagement in UDL, it's trying to still get that big picture concept of what we are trying to teach to the kids. Why should I care about this? When we go into that representation part, now this is the part in the digital environment that I was like, okay, we are all working from stressed brains. The kids have stressed brains. Their entire learning environment has been turned totally upside down to them. And so it's really what can we do to bust it down into those? This is the goal. It is linked to a concept. And then how do we get that out to them? And I had some examples here. I was laughing because I'm like, well, there's Google Classroom. We're using Seesaw. It's still like those small group times teachers are setting up. Some kids, it's straight up phone calls. They don't even have the computer time. So you're phoning, sending texts. It's really breaking these the normal boundaries we normally have with families. All of a sudden we're like, oh, now I'm texting someone's personal phone. Oh, now a kid's sitting on the computer in their bedroom, half closed. What do I do with my life? But getting out the information out to them, even in these digital platforms, carrier pigeon, that's a joke, but maybe it isn't. Maybe there's still some people that might appreciate getting their information that way. But the what is just, what do you want them to know? What do you want to break it down for them? What do they need to really take home to learn at this point? And it could be those super basic concepts. Oh, sorry, Nikki. I think I'm switching slides, but I actually have no power here.
Okay. Can I just poke a question at you for a second?
Totally.
Would you say that that we could potentially be boiling things down even more than we think we are?
especially right now when you're thinking of like emergency teaching, this is not online learning. This is not homeschool. This is emergency teaching that was put into place very quickly. And we think of that when we think of that continuum of learning rather than continuing learning and boiling it down to skills that they've already had, curriculum that they may have already been exposed to. So it's not having to keep going, pushing, but taking it way back. Like I found even myself as a parent, with my kids. So my kids are French immersion, which adds like a whole nother level of like, what am I supposed to be doing here? Because I don't speak French at all. So like things are coming home and I'm like, can my 7-year-old even read these instructions? We're like Google translating everything. I'm like, I don't even know if I can trust this Google Translate. But it was that really like, can we just pare it down to like that very simple I can statement? And we're going to talk about that later on. But even more than you ever would in the classroom when you're in front of them and you can see that facial expression of them, what is happening, what are they taking in, when you can take in all those nonverbal cues in this digital online environment where we're switching on what have people been saying, turning the cruise ship on a dime, really. It even has to be more simple than that because they're looking at it. I haven't had any pre-teaching. I don't have my peers around me to give me any cues of what I'm supposed to be learning. And now I'm taking in information in a way that I may or may not have been exposed to previously and having to respond back in a way that I may not or been exposed to previously. So it is even making it more simple than we ever would have imagined and breaking it down to those very base tiny things of what we're putting out for kids to be able to do at any level. I think honestly, like from those kindergarten, I'm like it's just still blowing my mind of how kindergarten happens online. Like this is like, I'm still like need to meet a kindergarten teacher and be like, what does this even look like? Like all the way through to like those 30 level courses there, like you guys are pounding through information that you need to get done. But it's like you're working with stressed brains in environments that they're not used to learning. Okay. Oh, it's up. The how. So the how is really, how are they going to show you what they know? I am like, this is hysterical to me that like the I can statements have come back in my life. Like they've come like around the circle. Cause like, I feel like I like was in the brink of the I can statement at the beginning of my career. And then I was like, I don't even believe in these I can statements. Like they dumb down the curriculum so much. Like, I don't even think this is like really teaching. Like I get like this, like, and now I'm like, right back to the I can statements. Like I was like, I needed to make these for myself as a parent. Like I can turn on the Google Classroom in the morning so my kids can learn. Like I can brush my teeth this morning so that I don't stink at the computer screen. No, but like with learning, right now, it really is the how is that they have to really know what you want them to be showing you and then have a broad range of ways of which that they can show you those things. So we're going to talk about the baked potato learning that Shelley Moore put out. We have the link to the video so that you can watch her because she's just so fabulous. She's way more fabulous than like Nikki. I like hate to break it to you, but like we're not going to be YouTube sensations like Shelley Moore is. So is that we right now are truly providing that baked potato, just the basis. We as teachers always want to put in all the layers of the baked potato. We want to provide everything all at once so that it's like this loaded, delicious, yummy, sour cream and chive baked potato. But especially during crisis teaching, which we're right in the midst of, we really need to break those I can statements down to that really base learning of just the potato. Have lots of exemplars, lots of like, this is what I think it should look like at the end. This is what we can do together, which is more of that targeted skill building. So in those small groups, when you know there's kids that need that really targeted time, to be able to create that with your targeted time, or have different assignments that you pump out. And we're going to talk about this too, of having assignments that you can pump out to different groups of kids in how they are putting it together. And then having the kids be able to have that student choice in the how of learning. Now, I honestly love this picture of the brain because we all know that that frontal cortex is like, this is where this how happens, but it's like not developed. like till you're, I don't know, old, like 25. I don't even know what the research shows now, like very old. And so there is still like the overwhelming nature of, if you threw out like a million ideas, kids would be like, I can't even pick. My executive functioning skills actually aren't that high. My frontal cortex is not actually developed. So it is okay to not think like I have to have a million ways for them to show me what I need to know, but to provide 2, 3, 4. And really in this time, that is simply like, if a kid needs pencil paper at still at home, they can just take a picture of it, send it. They could phone you on a Google Classroom meet and during an office hour and explain it verbally. They could make a video if they're so inclined. There are skills my 7-year-old daughter has learned during this on technology that I'm like, I did not think I would have to monitor this for another decade. But like, my 7-year-old can now take a video of herself and post it to the internet. I don't know that I want that to be a thing in our house. But COVID learning. Okay. Any questions? Well, I just like really wanted to breeze through that because I do want to just get into like the kind of baked potatoes and then have like some time for really specific, like I can give examples and pull things like literally like, oh, someone used to do this. Oh, I heard about this. But like, I want to get into some nitty gritty so you guys can get some examples. So that's why I'm kind of zipping through this part of it. But is there a pause point here? Any thoughts, questions? Okay.
Well, if nobody else has a question, then I'm going to poke the bear a little bit. So would you say then, so if you were talking about that we want to engage the whole brain with what we present, what we share with them, that we have boiled it down very clearly to the what they need to know, and it is as simple as an I-kind statement, and then we are giving some thoughtful consideration to how it's represented. So what the kids can use to share what they know. Would we, if we look at the way we did things pre-COVID, where we talked about, okay, I've got my lesson plan, I'm going to deliver it to everybody. And for those kids that need the supports, I'll just make sure that they've got the technology, the accessories, the modifications, the assistive technology. I'll just give it to them after. Is that the same thing that you're talking about?
So yes and no. In a real life environment, we have the joy, I'm going to call it a joy now, because once it's taken away from us, we're like, whoa, that is a big thing, of being able to differentiate on the fly. And so when you give an example, like where you can give a lesson, you have the ability in that moment to see reaction and to see how it comes back to you and then change and move on. It's kind of like actually even teaching right now to you guys when you don't have your computer screens on, it's a little horrifying because I'm like, oh, I'm so used to like the verbal, like the non-verbal like reaction to what you're saying. So at this point in time, I don't know that that is the best strategy because it isn't, you can't differentiate on the fly. You honestly have to have that so planned out in advance of like, I already know Johnny's not going to be able to read this slide. I have to throw in an audio. I have to throw in a video because I know him previously. He's not going to get this, or she's not going to get this. So it's that still keeping that such an in-depth knowledge of your students and what they're going to be able to comprehend. And planning that in before you deliver that lesson. Because when we go into this baked potato slide, you're going to see it is a lot harder to give the loaded baked potato and then try to siphon off the butter. Like, we can't siphon off the butter. So if the butter's not working for a kid, that is a lot harder than giving the base potato, developing the plan for what the toppings would look like, and then being able to create small groups, layer those on, give kids choice to put the toppings on that is in their creation power. It's not in yours. You don't have to give them the loaded baked potato. We can't do that because we can't differentiate on the fly right now as easily. Let's say that, as easily. We're masters at that in our classrooms. That's something that's so natural to teachers. So this adds a layer of complexity.
So why don't you just really quickly explain, because we won't watch the video with Shelley Moore, but why don't you just quickly explain the baked potato, and then we can start talking about some examples.
Okay, so Nikki, sorry, I can't see on my screen. Do you already have that slide up?
Oh, did I? Because you want to know what I did? I'm such a rookie. I went to go press the mute button, and I hung up myself. So how about I show you my screen again?
Well, she brings the screen up. I'll blabber on about the baked potato. So watch it in your spare time because it's just like enlightening. And it actually is great teaching, whether we're in COVID teaching or not. It's just one of those things. But it is the concept that of like how I was saying, how like we want all students to learn this, the baked potato. And then there's going to be layers of that some students will be able to learn, and the layers of complexity added on. Now, the big things with that baked potato learning is that the student is responsible for the making. You aren't responsible for the making. You as the teacher are responsible to bring the toppings and the raw ingredients to the table so that you have those layers. You're responsible for giving them the vision for the end product and the product along the way, if you're doing a product along the way. But they need to know if they're making a cake or a baked potato, what are these ingredients for? But it's the kids. The point is that it goes into the kids' hands that they create the potato that they're going to eat. The learning's going to be able to go down for. And yes, we will always have our like kids who know how to play the system to death. And they'll be like, oh, goes down the baked potato. Like, I don't want any toppings. I don't like butter. I don't like bacon bits. Like, you crazy. Of course you love bacon bits. Everybody loves bacon bits. Put the bacon bits on. So then us as teachers get the ability then to be able to speak into their lives. But we do have to give the release of like, you want to just do the baked potato? And you know what? Right now, in this literal time in history, that might be enough for you. Because you may have the computer in your house for 2.2 seconds and all your little siblings are squabbling at you and there's 6 of you in there and 2 iPads. You can't even see half the things that are going on, and your brother put some game on there that's making it really slow. So like right now in this moment, baked potato, we're happy with the baked potato. As a teacher, you expect more when like, you know, their brains aren't going nuts with all the stress going on in the world. Okay, now Nikki, I can't actually click on these things. This is fun. Okay, so let's boil this down. So when you think of strategies for the baked potato, I linked in here this baked potato planning pyramid. So if you just click that on, Nikki, quick, it'll make it so that we can kind of talk this through. So like, I love Shelley Moore. I love that she puts all her stuff online, like totally free. And you're just like, click, 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 click. Oh yeah, but teach me how to do that. So like, I like this kind of thing. It's just a nice little picture of like, what do we want them to learn? Literally, the goal for all is that very basic I can statement. I can communicate an opinion. I can make a connection in my reading. I can add double-digit numbers. Okay, whatever it is. I'm just pulling things out of my, you know. So, and then as you go in, it's those goals that add complexity. It's the topics. What do we need to do to add complexity? And what are most of the kids going to be able to do, but maybe not all? And then what are few of the kids going to be able to do? And you have to think of this on both sides of your spectrum. You're not planning this from nothing. You already know your kids. You already know you have a kid in your class that can't read. So what are you going to add into those topics so that they'll be able to have access to establish that goal? Do they need a graphic organizer? Do they need a graphic organizer with a little video of you showing them how to do it, the graphic organizer? Reading the graphic organizer if there's no technology that can read that for them. And then you have your other extreme where you have like Smarty Pants McGee, who needs to be able to have all these, I'm going to make the most creative idea. I'm going to be able to create a full-length video to post to YouTube that will, you know, also give my opinion with all my references and all the reasons why I have my anti-arguments. So like you already know your complexity, you know your kids. So it's just a matter of planning it out before you even start to know, I've got to make sure I provide this and I got to make sure to provide this. I don't want to do more work. I don't want to siphon off the butter. That is not a fun job. I want to start with what do I want them to do? Say it's communicate an opinion. And then after that, layer it on of how difficult that's going to look for certain kids, the few and the most and the all. So that is that pyramid. I always like to have visuals. They help me think about my planning. So I do like the way that Shelley Moore puts this together, and then it's like, oh, I can do that. I can think of the base concepts and then what I want everyone to be able to do, and versus what I want some to be able to do or most to be able to do. Okay, going back. Yay! So even though I'm now coming full circle, and I might do this more as like, I'm like, oh, in crisis, maybe it is important to simplify. It honestly is just setting that I can for the kids so that they know exactly what is the goal, exactly what can I do at the end of this. Why am I learning about clouds? I can identify clouds. So just really simplifying it down there. Now, Nikki, did you want to go in just to kind of show in the Google Classroom, we were thinking with those I can statements where there is a space to be able to put that in? Just because I think right now is when we really need to lay things out just so explicitly for kids because of not having that classroom environment where they take in all the information.
Yeah, for sure. So, and if you're in your Google Classroom, then there's a number of ways that you could do this, right? You can go into any of the assignments that you have created in classwork. And so I'll go into this one. And so when you put your, when you create the assignments in Google Classroom, then one place where I would put the I can statement is right in the instructions. I can do this, and that here's the total, like the product and the skill that I need to show. That's it. Now, certainly you would have other, you may have other instructions, but the when it's boiled down, this is the place for sure that you want the kids to see, that it's right in those instructions. And then if you add any files or any additional pieces to the assignment, like a series of Google Slides or a Google Doc or a Google Drawing, that I would even put it right in the file as well. So we're just reminding them, I can do this. This is the product. This is the skill. Yes, of course, Lily, we'll make sure that the link gets out to everybody. That the kids need to complete, okay? And then as we talk about making sure that it's accessible when we are setting the goal, because we're not there to actually verbalize it to them, right? We're relying simply that you're going to read this series, this I can statement, but actually we want to say it to them so that they can hear it as well, just like you would in the classroom, just like you verbalize it in the pre-COVID. And so where possible, then you want to create either a video screencastify, and then you can add it here as a kind of like, here's the instructional video, like here's the series of instructions, or that you create an audio file. And again, same thing, you can add it here as here's the instructions audio, so that you are walking the kids through, not just with text, but that you are walking them through visual and auditory, so that there are no additional hoops that they have jumped through. So Lisa, you've talked about making, like, just engaging the whole brain. And I've mentioned in previous Lunch and Learns that they're hoops. If there are additional hoops that the kids have to jump through, then it's like, I'm out. I'm not jumping through another hoop. Right? And if they have a hard time reading, and you're asking them to read these instructions to complete the task, and if the instructions are vague and not explicit, and they have to make assumptions and process what you're asking, it's a hoop. They have to jump through a hoop, and you're asking them to do something that they may not have the skill to do. So again, we're out.
This is where, like, our Div 1 teachers just kill it, because they know the kids can't read anything. And so, like, it's just barely natural for them. And I mean, you guys, I can speak for no judgment. I literally haven't seen anyone's Google Classroom except like my own personal children's. But and so it is like, it's just one thing that we really have to take that back to basics, because even with those older kids that potentially could read the content, they aren't really thinking. Like, I know, don't even react to that. They aren't really thinking most of the time. Why? Because they don't have a frontal door. No, but it just helps them to be able to do that. And I mean, I was talking to my mom the other day, and even her daughter, who's very like average, above average in math, has been so thankful for her math lessons these days because of being able to pause and go back. And the mom, who's not a teacher at all, not an educator, was like, I am so thankful that they like have been able to do this where they're not frustrated at math when they come home and when they're at home doing their work, because they're able to like pause the video and be like, oh, I can look that over again. She's like, I hope that continues even when they go back to the classroom. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. That is something that it's helpful for them, even those like very average normal kids who generally would learn well in a classroom environment. So anyways, those I can statements, I know it's crazy. And it's like, think about the verbiage again, like you differentiate for your class how you need to. You can have the very simple verbiage of like, I just need to identify, all the way like up through that synthesize, analyze. Like you know as the teacher where you want all your kids to identify there. And then as you can instruct with those for most or for some, the verbiage may change. Every kid may be able to identify a thought, but some may be able to classify, or every kid may be able to verbally communicate their opinion or communicate their opinion, and some people may be able to communicate their opinions with reason, with examples, with counter examples. So anyways, that is that kind of section of as far as the strategy of setting those goals. Connecting the goals to concepts, not activities. Now, this is a big one. I mean, we could say curriculum there, concepts. I mean, I think we're in a stage right now in emergency teaching where it is very concept driven, even over a specific curricular objective. You guys, you've had to skinny back and kind of not take way bigger concepts than you normally would in a classroom environment. That's natural. But it's not being married to the activity end product, but knowing that you want your goal to go along with the concept of what you want to learn. You can't even, I was thinking, some of the examples I have are with book clubs. And I was like, even at this point, like, it's not even like a kid could read the same book. Like, that's not even in the realm. So what do you want to do with a book club? Well, you might want to provide a theme. You may have a concept of having the comprehension concepts of like making connections, inferring, synthesizing. You're basically taking it down to those base concepts because you can't even control what they read right now. Like you don't know if they have it unless you're reading it out loud or have sent them the audio file. Those are things where it's like, oh, we very naturally in the classroom could have done a novel study with this, but now it has to look totally different because we're all in our own environments. So connecting that goal to concepts, not activities. And I mean, Nikki has in there those text strategies that help with that, being able to do that.
Well, and I think where possible, as we consider the product, now I'm going to make a generalization here, and Lisa, you may want to speak into it, but where we often see some of the biggest struggle is if the output and the product is expected to be written or typed. And so while certainly we could still have products that are written or typed, but if the outcome or the concept that we are looking to get data on has nothing to do with language or written output, then toss the writing, like toss it and have a conversation with the kid. And you could do that with an interview style in Google Meet. Oh goodness gracious. You could do that with Flipgrid. So Flipgrid is a video tool. I did a previous Lunch and Learn. It's on YouTube, go watch it. You could get the kids to use to put an audio extension where it just creates an audio. It's kind of like a recorder, and they can submit a file that way. Do it hard copy and take a picture of it. Create a manipulative. So in this season, we are not married to the output, the product. What we are married to is the concept or the curriculum. And then it doesn't really matter what the product looks like, as long as the kid is able to show, I know this, I can do this, I can show you exactly what you are looking for. It just might look a smidgen different than somebody else's.
Which I love, Vicki. I actually think this is one of the joys of what we have right now is we get to kind of just embrace total creativity and anarchy. Okay, it's not quite that bad, but like, I was watching my son do his assignment the other day, and he's doing every day in French. They're given like how they have to communicate their opinion. This is why this keeps coming into my mind. And they have a graphic organizer and they have little sentence prompts. And at first, like, I was like, okay, 9-year-old who doesn't know how to type, he's like trying to type in French. We can't get like the French keyboard at my house. It's taking him forever just to like, he's trying to type out his ideas. I'm like, enough. Like, we cannot sit here for an hour of you figuring out how to use the French keyboard. And then I finally Google translated because I can't read the instructions in French. And the teacher like had no concept that they would have to type in their answer. She just gave an example. They could phone her during her office hours to give their opinion. They could type out the answers. They could make little videos. And I'm like, Elijah, you are never again going to type this response. You never miss a meeting with your teacher when you have to give her your opinion. You phone and you just say it to her. Because if I have to look at Google Translate one more time with what you think you're typing down and watch you peck and hunt on a French keyboard, I'm like, I'm going to lose my ever-loving mind. We cannot do this. So it was so good because I was like, oh. But then I was taking it back and I'm like, wow. All the times in my classroom when I taught 7th grade, when I made those little ones write out or type out their opinion. And I'm like, I could have just sat at my desk with my feet up and a coffee and been like, come tell me your opinion. I'm like, that would have been amazing. Why didn't I do that? So let's like take this broadly, people. It's so fun to be able to think like, what can I actually keep of this that is making my life so much simpler where the work's on them and I just get to enjoy the benefits of what they learn. Anyways. That's my little thing on there. Okay, scaffold complexity. Oh my goodness. Okay, this feels like it's like an entire seminar in itself. I can't even like, this is like where like all those layers start coming in. So all I did was link a whole bunch of examples. Now, I'm not gonna lie. This may be like the baked potato of samples. Like I didn't give myself the bacon bits. So like, don't judge me on my like low level of samples, but like they give good general ideas. So thank you, Jessica. I will read that later so I can stop complaining and having read spell Google Translate. Okay, so part of the layered curriculum, it's Kathy Nunley. So if we click on this, it's a lady who like does brain research and she's a teacher. And she came up with this concept and I like actually how her and Shelley Moore kind of go together on this. So Shelley Moore gives that very like philosophical, airy-fairy concept of scaffolding and layering curriculum. Kathy Nunley gives more of like a this is what it looks like this is what it could actually look like. And she does like do a lot of where she puts like points to the things. And I've done this in my grade 7 class where like I have my different layers of like everyone's going to do this base layer, and then some of you will get to the layer B, and some more of you will get to that layer A, and the complexity like grows and grows and grows as you go through it. And I'll show you with an example with the novel study that we did. But so I put this in here with look it over. It's something just to think about, like, oh, this would be a way to be like, every kid can do this, or pick something from this list to do. If I have a bunch of ESL kids in my class that need to have like a vocabulary, okay, they can do a vocabulary, but there may be someone else who just wants to do vocabulary. And as we go through the layers, it will add on that complexity. So she gives a more of a meat and potatoes, not just a philosophical way of being able to do a layered curriculum. So if we pull up, like, let's pull up that layered curriculum for Freak ID. So I'm using Freak ID. This like literally ages me. Like everyone's used Freak ID. We like love this book as teachers, especially in 7th and 8th grade. It's like, ooh, Freak ID. I know that some places have banned it now because it uses an appropriate American language that we should never use again. But an idea of this, if in your planning stages, when you're making your planning, is to have, you could take a novel study. This is the required thing. Everyone reads the book or listens to the book or has the audio of the book or has someone read them the book. But then it has just different ideas that would go through the layers that scaffold the complexity. And it does have the point system, which you may hate and not even go there to take the points right out. But you can give one of the things that they can choose 60 points while they look. Okay, so they have to pick four or five activities in this layer C. And kids could choose. These are the ones I want to do. They're designing, they're making, they're responsible for doing the making, you're providing the raw materials. Okay, and layer B, it adds on complexity. It also goes into abstract art forms, which allows a total different creative side to kids. Okay, there's more of like tying it in and connecting it to other curriculum things on bullying, and all the way down into that layer A, which is much more complex, where they could write but they have to do a written response in a paper, a video documentary, or a newspaper article. So there's still choice in what that outcome looks like in a much more complex question. Some kids, won't make it to layer A, and that's fine. That's not in their cognitive development. That's not in their skill level at this moment. It's okay, but you have it provided so that there are some that will get there. I did another one there that's simpler. It's a layered curriculum for the history comes alive. Maybe if we click on that one. So it doesn't have to look as complex as those other layered curriculums, but it's an example of how, so in like an actual unit plan, you would have all of the matching information that would go with this, like the rubrics and the exemplars. And like, this is tip to the wise in general. Maybe it isn't the wise. I mean, you can take it and believe it as you want. So I used to pay my students for for their exemplars. So I'd be like, you should see what kids will do for $1/$2. Like, they're like, you're gonna buy this from me? Like, you're gonna buy whatever I do here? I'm like, yeah, like if I think I can use it and keep it forever, like, sure, I'll buy it. It's like your intellectual property. I'm just buying it from you. And they would do the best projects. Like, they'd have, like, it would be gorgeous, like publishable. And I'm like, and here's $2, go to the vending machine. And they're like, woohoo, I spent 40 hours doing this project at home, and now I get $2 for the vending machine. So anyways, that's my word to the wise on these. Because having those exemplars, so like when I put in this history comes alive, those comprehension strategies, those would technically be the I can statements. I can self-monitor, I can analyze, I can make connections. If I would write them in I can statements, but it just layers on the different aspects of what the kids can do, what they can choose from, of what we're learning in that history comes alive unit, with the inquiry question of how do people meet the challenges of tough times. I really strongly believe in the like, I can, you can, we can, you can, I can, we can, you can. So I generally just try to structure the information around, I have a mentor text where I give the examples of what that looks like, and then they have a breadth of things that they could choose from. Sometimes it is where they're placing groups because you know them in this type of situation in COVID. Let's go back, Nikki, into the example from the book club. I may give examples from the book that I'm reading in the Freak the Mighty Book Club. This is much more skinny down, but you may not have control over what they have at home right now, but you could say, can you find a book about friendship and loyalty? The book I'm using is whichever one. I happen to have Freak the Mighty on here. And in this PowerPoint, you can see there's, if you go into chapter 1, I put in a bunch of links here too. You guys can like just straight up steal some of this. Like there's the Scholastic links to all the graphic organizers. It's all like the e-learning for this specific novel that give questions. But I would say in chapter 1 of your book, I'm using Freak the Mighty as my mentor text. This is an example from what I'm doing. In chapter 1 of your book, we're making predictions. I can make a prediction about a text. Give a graphic organizer, have a little video, have examples of how you could fill in that graphic organizer. They use their text from their chapter 1 and their cover to either, maybe the group simply fills in the graphic organizer. That's where they're at. Maybe that's all you expect. Maybe there's a group that can fill in the entire graphic organizer and turn it into a paragraph of what they predict is going to happen in their book about friendship. And you could give suggested titles or whatnot. And the same, it's just kind of gives the outline and the scaffold of what you want to teach, simply skinnies it down into those very, very base concepts, and then how the kids produce the product can come back to you in whichever form you want, a video or multiple forms. They could take a picture, they could write it out. So yeah. Any questions in there, Nikki? I don't know. I feel like I just kind of flipped through that one like so fast, but this is where I did want to get, where people, you're it. This is the you're it slide. I don't want to just jabber on with my examples that are like the mediocre examples that don't even have all the information. But if anyone wants to add in here, this is like where we're opening it up. Like, what are some ideas? What are some things? What are some things you're like, I was thinking about this, but now I don't know.
So in other words, what Lisa is saying is that this is an opportunity to unmute your microphone and either pose a question for her, like, how could I do this? Or it could be this is what I've tried.
No, everyone's multitasking. They're tired. They already got this. They're like, Lisa, stop talking. We've been doing this for 2 months. We got it.
If there are no other kind of questions or suggestions, then why don't we just kind of keep going, and then if there's any questions that people have, we'll save those towards the end. But as we start to wrap up, you were saying we're just going to talk about those, just really quickly revisit the types of products that the kiddos could produce to demonstrate what they know.
Yeah, so we just have to be willing to give up control as teachers to say, send it in how you best can show me you know this. And there's multiple ways they could do that. Like honestly, there was a point where I was like, I think the mail. I think like we're doing a Flat Stanley project and we're just gonna start mailing things through the mail and we're gonna pick it up at the mailbox. Like I'm like, that might be the best way to do this. So I'm glad that there's techie people like Nikki who are like, no, Lisa, you don't need to use the mail. You can like actually send it in the Google Doc. So using all those platforms in the way that the kids find most meaningful to them, easiest for them. Like I know the Flipgrid, like as much as I love it now, my son and I were doing like a Flipgrid of his spelling sorts. And it was like a 2-minute spelling sort that took us like 40 minutes to figure out how to use the Flipgrid to do the spelling sort. And I mean, it's great now. Now he does it in 2 minutes. But I'm like, at that moment, I was like, I don't want to learn a new technology. This is like too much for my brain right now. But as they come along with the technology and they're so good at it, the kids really do catch on so much quicker than I do. My like old brain really doesn't move that quickly anymore. So yeah, just that there's lots of options for how they can put in the final product and just let them have the control and give that up. And that's hard as teachers. We're very type A. We're very control oriented.
Yeah, and I would probably just add that again, that whatever, if you do give the kiddos some options around what the products could look like, that the end product is not interfering with the concept. It's not actually making demonstration of the concept more difficult. So I could argue that the Flipgrid for a spelling sort, that would strike me as using a tool that's actually complicating the concept. And so really, we just really want to be thoughtful. Like if the concept is simple, then present some simple strategies. But if the concept is more sophisticated, perhaps then give the kids some opportunities to share that sophistication to you, and that the product doesn't, or the type of product isn't just making it more difficult.
Keep it simple, stupid. Sorry.
Yes. Perhaps that's the motto of today. Really is just use the KISS method.
We can't kiss in real life, but we can keep it simple, stupid.
So just as we kind of wrap up, we want to throw at you, certainly we've had lots to share in terms of the philosophical and the planning. But Lisa, I think what you've really done is hit home that it's not just that we are using the tips and tricks and things in Google Classroom or Google Tools or applications to just support the kid with the end product, but that we're actually thinking about it from the design end, not the finish.
Totally. That's the key right there. Nobody likes to work harder than they need to. And like, I keep going back to that. Nobody wants to siphon off the butter. So if you get it right in the design phase, you do it once and it is beautiful and you can see and live in the joy of the results. When you're at the end going, actually now I have to do this for this kid because he didn't get it. And oh, now I'm answering this question. That's the part that's hard. That's the frustrating part of teaching.
Yeah. So just as a couple helpful, potentially techie things to pass on, but as we mentioned, what we really want to share with you is that it's not about the techie things, that it's really from the planning end and not the product end. But just remember that you do have those ways to customize who gets what in Google Classroom. So if you are in an assignment, that you can select in your for who gets what, and you can already start to kind of group and provide access to who needs what. There is the option to record in Google Meet. So even if it's just a face-to-face conversation in Google Meet, then you can even record it, and then you have a evidence of it. And then last but not least, there is the read and write for Chrome. There is that toolbar. Every kiddo has access to it. Although I would just put it out there, if your kiddos have not seen this before, I don't know that now would be the time to be like, and hey, here's the read and write for Chrome toolbar. But it is there. So if you want to model it in a screencastify, in an instructional video or a screencast, you could do that. But so it is there, but consider it as part of the plan and not part of the product or the execution.
And if you have kids, I don't want to work for ourselves, but if you do have kids that have like real needs to use the read write, they have potentially used it and they're just having trouble doing it independently at home, contact the ILT team, email myself, because we can help support with that. Sheldon is amazing at supporting with the read write, and so we can support with being able to get kids connected with that so that they have some independence in some of those tasks.
Okay. And then before we let you go and bring it to a close, just there are a couple of resources. So when Lisa was talking about like graphic organizers and things like that, so certainly there are the PDFs that she has shared, but you can also access through our colleagues in Black Gold and our colleagues in Edmonton Catholic. They continue to create in kind of Google applications some of these graphic organizers. So you can access them. There are different ones that you can go grab and then just go file, make a copy, and then use it for your own, customize it as you need to, and then use it for your own kiddos. There is the continuing learning website, which resources continue to be added to. The YouTube channel of all those how-to recorded webinars, that's there as well. But what we've added is the CAST website and the Shelley Moore YouTube channel. So I'll just show that, the UDL site briefly. Do you want to speak to that, Lisa?
Just that it's just a great place to go when we're thinking, like, for planning, for thinking, what is this? What are some ideas that they have? These are the creators. It's the original place to go to think UDL. It has like beautiful representations like Nikki's going through here. When you're like, wow, what would this look like in UDL? Like my brain can't even think like that. I'm just like thinking down my one narrow mind. It's somewhere to go to help just broaden that. Like this would be helpful with some kids.